Okay, today we're just still down in Romans, the 13th chapter, and we've got quite a ways down. We want to call our attention to the fact that in chapter 13, basically the first half of the chapter is talking about God's teaching about a Christian and civil government, telling us what we are to do. If you rounded up everything you know about your relationship to civil government, what would you say our responsibility is? What did he tell us to do? Obey. That really is it, isn't it? That we are to obey, and God has instituted civil government for a purpose. So we've put this chart up each time, and that is that God has given us three great institutions. He has given us the family for a particular purpose. He has given us the kingdom and the church for a particular purpose. And then He has given us civil government for a particular purpose. They are three separate, distinct things, and each one of them has its own responsibilities. And what is the responsibility of the government? If you summed it up in, against, what, three words? What I'm trying to say is, how would you sum it up? Why did God institute civil government? What is its responsibility? I can outweight you. What is its responsibility? You can put it either negative or you can put it positively. What's that?
Maintain order.
All right, keeping order. But what does Romans 13 say? It's an avenger. It's to take vengeance on whom? Them that do evil, evildoers. It is protect the good and to punish the evil. So that really is the basic responsibility of what the government is. So God put that in the government's hands, not in the father's hands in a family, not in the church's hands, but in the government's hands. That's what the government is supposed to do. And our responsibility then is to obey them. Now, as we look at the civil government here, we see that Paul's instruction is just really this, and that is to obey the government because it's God's servant to punish evildoers. And now then, he's going to give us some other commands. So if you started reading, last week we finished what he tells the civil government we are to do in here. So he gets down to verse 6. The first 5 verses tells us about that. Now then, he's getting ready to give us some other instructions about what we are supposed to do. He said, for this cause. For what cause? Because God instituted civil government to control the evildoers and punish the evildoers and protect the citizens of a country. For this cause you pay tribute also. So now we're told not only to obey them, but we're told to pay tribute. Now the word tribute literally means local taxes. It's local taxes such as property taxes. Or here in Monroe, we have to pay state taxes, and then there's a certain amount, I don't know what it is, whether it's 1.5% of city taxes. So there are taxes all around us, as we know. Every time you buy a loaf of bread, I've seen, probably you have too, a list of taxes. And I forget what it is. It seemed to me like it was 30-some different taxes that are assessed on a loaf of bread. And tribute. Tribute is the local taxes, whatever the local government puts on you. And then it says, and custom to whom custom is due. Now, custom are taxes between countries. If we make a product here and we ship it off to Japan, Japan makes a product over there, they ship it over here. There are taxes that are paid between those two countries. And if we owe custom, then we pay custom. Now, kind of hard today in America. You say, well, I don't pay taxes custom because it's the government that does it. But I would suppose that if you ordered a shirt from Germany and ordered it over the internet, so your shirt comes with a COD, you have to pay on there, there may be some taxes on there, German taxes. That would be custom. It wouldn't be local taxes, it wouldn't be national taxes, it would be between countries in some way or another. So custom is literally really between countries, between nations. That's the idea that you have in there. Then he says, and then show fear to whom fear is due. Now the word fear means fear, dread, or terror. Reverence and respect. Now, as you look at those first three words, there really appears to be opposite of the last two. Now, we use fear in this way. We use fear in the sense that we're scared to death. If there was a terrorist came in here now with a machine gun, had a machine gun, he came in, held this machine gun up here, I expect every one of us would be filled with terror except Josh. He probably wouldn't bother him. Right? Now that's fear. That's scared. And that's what this word means. It means fear. Then on the other hand, fear means reverence or respect. It means, well, if I were going to meet the President of the United States, what would you do if you knew that you were going to meet the President of the United States this afternoon, 3 o'clock, he's going to come to your house? How would you feel? Would you just be sitting there the same way as if you knew I was coming to get a cup of coffee at 3 o'clock? Or would you be bouncing all over the house? Oh, I wonder what to do. How do I shake his hand? Now, what do I call him? And now, what are you doing? Well, you're showing a respect. You're showing a respect to an office. You're showing a reverence, which is another word for respect. That also is called fear. Wives are to fear their husbands. Now, I've tried every way in the world that I can get to get Helen to do the first three, so that when I walk in, she shakes and, what do you want, honey? But it doesn't work. It doesn't work. Now, really, the Bible says wives are to fear their husbands. Is that what he's talking about, what I just got through describing, that shaking and terror and scared to death and so forth? What does he mean? Wives, fear your husbands. Respect them. Respect them. Show them honor. See? Revere them as your husband. So that word fear is there. So now, whenever you are in a situation, you show fear to whom fear is due. And show reverence to whom reverence is due. Would reverence be due to, let's say, the President of the United States if he came to visit you this afternoon? Does he deserve honor and respect? Now, you might totally disagree with his political thing. You might say, I disagree with all of the stuff he's doing. He's putting us in debt, and I just hate it. I just hate what he's doing. But does he hold an office to where you need to fear or respect him? See? Hold him in reverence. That's where the Bible says we're not to speak evil of those men. It doesn't mean we're to agree with what they do, but it means that we are to show that office respect. Now just remember, presidents come and presidents go, but the presidency is there. See? The presidency is there. So he says, that's how you are to behave yourself in the civil way, then that's here. Then he said, honor to whom honor. The word honor means a thing prized for high value, veneration or reverence. It's kind of like fear, except it has one other little aspect that's always in honor. Honor is where you look at something and you hold its value up here. You put the value that's there. If I honor my wife, it would mean that whatever I do or whatever I say will cause you to hold her in higher regard. If I say something that makes you think, boy, she is a terrible woman, then I have not honored her. So it's causing a person to be held in high respect. Now, of course, you honor and fear, they go together in those ways there. Now then, here's the interesting thing. He now turns to this, and he says in here, he says, for this cause you pay tribute also, for they are ministers of God's servants, attending continuously upon this very thing. That is, upon the very thing that we've talked about, and that is rendering vengeance to evildoers. Render to all their dues, tribute to whom tribute is due, to custom to whom custom, fear to whom fear, honor to whom father. Now then, he says, owe no man anything save to love one another. So now, owe no man anything. Now, I put this up here. Owe no man anything means always pay your debts when due. I put that when due out there because the question always comes up. If you say, owe no man anything, does that mean that you cannot take a mortgage out on your house? Because you would owe the bank, you see, this mortgage payment that's there. Well, in essence, you don't owe the bank. If my mortgage payment comes due on the first of the month, and on the first of the month I paid my mortgage payment, the bank, we signed a piece of paper and said we'll loan you this money, and the money is due this way. Every first day of the month you owe me $100. Now, when I send them that $100, do I owe them anything? Then really, see? No, I don't owe them anything until next month. Then I owe them something, because that's agreement that you have in this particular system. Now, what he says is, owe no man anything. So, always make your payments is the way we would put it. Don't get yourself in debt. I don't suppose there's ever been a time in the history of man when a nation has functioned on debt the way we have. Is there? You know, you go back to first century time. When did a person pay for a day's labor? Somebody goes out and works that day. When was it that you were supposed to pay them? That evening. You pay them that evening. And James condemns some of the rich people that held back their wages and didn't pay them because they needed it that evening. So it was on a daily basis that people lived. So don't borrow something you can't pay, and make sure that you don't owe anybody anything. Now, in our nation today, how many credit cards have you been offered? And you look at this and you see it, and do you know, in the way our nation works, do you know which credit cards the companies like the best? Is it the person that pays their credit card every month? As soon as they get the bill, they pay their month. They pay their debt. Or is it the person that gets behind and doesn't pay? Well, we've all known this for years, that they like that because if you miss a payment, then they get to charge you interest, and it goes up to, what, about 19%. See, is where they will hit you. You miss 2 payments, 25%. Now, they're really making some big money. Well, the interesting thing that I bring out about this is, last week, I heard it on the news where the credit card companies are making a switch, and they are getting ready to cancel a lot of credit cards. So a lot of your credit cards may be canceled. Guess which credit cards they're going to cancel? They're going to cancel the people who pay every month on time. and they don't have a balance. Well, they don't make enough money that way. They want the credit cards of the people that are late so they can pay all of the big ones. So now that actually was on the news, that's what the credit card companies now are getting ready to do. Then you come back to another thing, and what caused this great financial crisis that we've got in America and in the world today? What was it that caused this? It was credit, wasn't it? It was credit. And what caused the recession to where people can't get a job to make a product, to be able to sell the product? What caused all of that? It's that the businessmen could not get credit. So we got to open up credit. So then we have to do this. And what you've heard now in the last few months, everything about it is credit. We have to solve the credit problem so people can get credit. I think that's interesting. I just bring it up to you that I think that's interesting. That when you say, well, is there another system that we could go on? Yeah, there is. There is another system. Instead of running on a system the way we do, which gets us in terrible trouble, let's make sure as Christians that you and I do this very thing. Don't borrow money and get yourself in debt where you can't pay it. That's what he says. Owe no man anything. Because when that happens, 100 different things are going to happen. Not only is your reputation going to be damaged, but you're going to damage the person that you owe the money to, and that's going to cause this and that, and on the thing goes. So when he says this, owe no man anything, I'm just trying to point out today, that's a big thing. That is really, really a big thing. I've heard 2 or 3 figures, but do you know what they say the average American owes on their credit card today? This is the average that's out there. How much they owe, it's on there. Now, it used to be $20,000. I remember about 5 or 6 years ago, it was the average American owed $20,000. The other day, I heard over the news, whether you can believe everything you hear or not, I don't know. But they were talking about this, that the average American owes $35,000. Now, how many of you in here have $35,000 that if you needed to pay at 6 o'clock tonight, you wouldn't have any problem? You could, yeah, I can pay that $35,000. See, and you think about that and you think, wow. Now, it wouldn't be so bad if only 2 or 3 of us did that, but that's the national average. The national average across the nation is Americans are that far in debt. Do you think there's any problems?
I was just going to ask you, what about Christians filing bankruptcy?
You have to ask all the hard questions, don't you? What about Christians filing bankruptcy? The reason she asked that is that's where you go down and say, I can't pay my debts and I'm not going to pay my debts. And that's it. I'm going to file bankruptcy, and so I'm not going to pay my debts. So now I've loaned Linda, $50,000, and she's got $50,000 on her credit card, and then she's got $50,000 on her car, and then and she can't make all these payments. So she goes down and she files bankruptcy. And so then I get a letter along with these other people, Dear Mr. Williams, Linda has filed bankruptcy, and we will take what she possesses and sell it and send you an equal distribution. So some of these days out of the $50,000, I get a check for $10. And it says, here is your share of Linda's bankruptcy. Now, she filed bankruptcy, and now then she's still out there going, and she's going ahead then with life. Now, is that right? I mean, you look at it and you say, no, that's exactly what Paul says don't do. Paul said, pay your debts. Pay your debts, see? So it's just exactly what he says don't do. Now, here's the interesting thing. And here's where we get in trouble again in a nation of creditors. Now, I'm not teaching this morning on politics and money and banking. I'm not doing that. What I'm saying is that you and I are living like a fish in water. We're living in a bowl of water. We're a bunch of goldfish. And whatever there is in that water affects us, isn't there? Suppose you had 10 goldfish at home. There. And there it is. They're swimming around in that water. And I come in with some kind of a harsh chemical, and I put a drop in the water. How many goldfish will be affected? Some will die, some won't, but they're all going to be affected. Now, you and I are all swimming in this society. We're all Americans. And we're living in a society that runs on debt. We're in a society of where the banks try to get us in debt, where the government encourages debt, where merchants encourage debt. How many of you ever seen this more furniture? Every time I turn on my TV, more furniture comes on. Come and buy today. We will pay your taxes. There's no interest until when? 2012 or 13, somewhere along there. I think it's 4 or 5 years before you have to pay your first payment. And so, is that encouraging debt? How many people that can't afford a couch, but they want a couch, said, let's go down and buy a couch, because that way we can get a couch. But when they do it, what have they done to themselves? They've got themselves in debt. Now, we're living in that society, whether we like it or not. So here's the interesting thing. I had always just been adamant against bankruptcy, and I still am. You need to pay your debts. But why would anybody come up with bankruptcy? And I heard an attorney one time, went to a seminar, and he explained it. And he said, the reason why there are bankruptcy laws is this, that there are people who get themselves in such bad debt. Linda borrowed this $50,000 off of me, $50,000 on her car, $50,000 over here, and look at it, and she can't make the payments. Now, she can't make the payments. What are all of us guys going to be doing? She owes this $50,000. What am I going to be doing? Am I going to be trying to get her? Yeah. Am I going to file the credit companies and get them to chase her? And I'm trying everywhere. And I'll spend $25,000 to get this $50,000 back, wouldn't I? Wouldn't that be good business? Huh? So I'm spending money. Every month I'm spending money. I'm paying these companies $100, $200 every month to get after her. And she can't pay her debt. Well, here it is. I'm spending all this money. So the government says there comes a time when we need to protect the citizens. There comes a time when we need to protect poor old Lowell from Linda. Now, she's got him in debt. She can't pay that. That poor guy, he's never going to get his $50,000 because she can't pay it. But every month he's spending another $100, $200. So we're going to set in a bankruptcy law to protect me. So she goes bankrupt, and that stops me from trying to collect any farther. So I'm not going to be throwing my $100, $200, $300 after bad money because I can never get it. So the idea of bankruptcy then was a good idea. It was a good idea to protect the innocent people who did the loaning. But we come back again. Does that solve our problem? No, because what is it that Linda can do? How long is it before she can go out and buy another, run all this stuff up again? 7 years. In 7 years, she can go do it. This same attorney said, I know of different attorneys. He didn't say he was one of them. But he said, I know of different attorneys that tell me that their clients come in and they fill out bankruptcy papers 7 years in advance. They come in and they fill out a bankruptcy paper, And then while they're in there, they fill out the one for 7 years on down the line. Because in 7 years, they have good credit. They go out, they buy all the stuff again, and file for bankruptcy. And then they do it again. He said, that's how they make their living. So my point is, as I'm talking about all this stuff, my point is, we're like a bunch of fish in water swimming. And the culture that we're in is built on money. And it's not built on honest money. It's built on credit. It's built on credit to get every individual as far in debt as you can get them, to get control of these things, get as much money out of you as I can get with all of this big interest. And so you get hurt, and finally now the whole world collapsed. America's hurt, business are hurt, you're hurt, people out of work, all this going on. And what happened? Somebody came along and dropped a drop of poison in the fish bowl. And what's that poison that's in our society? It's credit. It's the opposite of what this is. So, you look at this thing and boy, it becomes a complicated situation, doesn't it?
Well, one of the things that I worked for an attorney for 4 years, and one of the things that we saw the most wasn't Linda overspending her budget, but was rather the medical bills that could be incurred that you really didn't have a choice about.
Mm-hmm.
You've got a child sitting there in the hospital for a week, and all of a sudden you've got a debt that's as much as you make in a year.
Mm-hmm.
So there are some, we call them kind of honest
Mm-hmm.
debts
Okay.
that you don't have control over.
Mm-hmm.
And that, well, the attorney that I worked for said, I will help you file a bankruptcy if medical bills are your predominant problem.
Mm-hmm.
But if it's just overspending, I won't.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that throws another thing in there, is debt we can control
Mm-hmm.
and debt we can't control.
Mm-hmm. Okay. That's great. Everybody hear that? Yeah, everybody back there hear what she said? Because it's a real good point. And she worked for an honest man. And is there an honest attorney? She worked for an honest man. And you see, it just goes to prove what I've been talking about. This fish bowl that we're in, that we're all swimming around in a fish bowl of finances that are based on credit. And then we see all of the bad things that go on that's in here. But out of all these bad things, will there be a legitimate one? There's always somebody comes up with a legitimate one. And if she's talking about, here's a person that can't afford insurance and their child gets deathly sick and they rush him to the hospital and the hospital charges $300,000 and there's no way on earth they can pay it, and they send them over to another specialist, to a hospital, and another $100,000, and no way on earth that they can pay it. What's the only solution you see that you've got in this situation that's there? And don't come to me and ask me to solve that problem. You just let your child die, and you say, now here's somebody who can save my child's life, but it'll put me in debt, and so just let the kid go ahead and die. Now that will solve the problem, you see. And another thing that would solve the problem is doing what she says it does, but there's another thing that would solve the problem too in this whole situation of where we live with money coming in, and that is, what about these, let's take the medical profession, in a situation to where the charges and the prices are the way they are. Should there be some kind of a system to where we might help those people where they don't have to file bankruptcy? You see that goes in there? Yeah, there's another situation that's in there. Well, my whole point today, and you're just helping solve it, and I'll say this, and then Dave, you can, I'll say this. In the book of Romans, we've been trying over and over again to show the things that Paul talks about are everyday problems. How many times you've heard me say that? See, he deals with everyday problems. And it's awfully easy for us to just pass over it in here. Owe no man anything. Then, bing, get on with the next thing. No, owe no man anything. Stop. Take a breath. What does that mean? And really think about it. And if we stopped and really thought about it, how many of us could save ourselves from getting into a big problem? See? Dave.
When Ephesians 4:28, where it talks about working with your hands so that you can help some of those that are in need, as Christians, wouldn't that be an obligation in circumstances like she's talking about, not somebody that's just flagrantly spending their money, but somebody that's really in need? Don't we have an obligation? And then another place it talks about if we see a brother in need and we don't help him, then we've got the problem.
Yeah, there's more to this finances than what we're just dealing with here. And so as he pointed out in Ephesians 4:28, work with your hands that you may have to help the needy. Yeah, that's a good point. So he tells us to help our brethren like this. But then when you come back again, say, okay, that's the solution then. That's the solution. Well, all right, let's go up here to Evergreen, or let's go up here to Monroe, and how many people come in there without insurance, can't pay their bills, and run up a great big bill who are Christians, who are honest people trying to do what is right? Or how many of them are the kind that tries to beat people out of everything that they have? Then you've got that, see? And so now, what do you do about that, see? So do you go out and you say, okay, bring all the druggies in, bring everybody in. And really, when you get down to it, the Bible, New Testament, is very plain that the New Testament church has an obligation of benevolence to help the needy, but what needy? The needy who are Christians, your own needy, you see, that's there. So yeah, Dave, that's another very, very important point to put in, but it doesn't solve the whole problem, so there's still problems that are out there that's here. Well, we haven't gone anywhere today, except just that one little thing. Owe no man anything. But I think we've made this one big point again, and it's a point that I want to drive home, starting with Romans 12, over and over and over again. Every little statement he makes is just full of advice, good advice, that will keep you out of trouble. When you get yourself in debt, mark it down. You are in trouble. And if you say, well, I have financial problems, then let's write down the first thing that you need to do. Not second. First thing you need to do, pay off your debts. You say, man, if I do that, I won't have any money left. That's fine. Take a second job and pay off your debts. And you say, but I've got $35,000. No problem. It's going to take 10 years. No problem. The answer is pay off your debts. So don't buy the couch. Don't buy this until you have done that very thing. This is a great, great big thing when we get down to it. Okay, that clock I said I could read up there a minute ago says it's time to stop. So class dismissed.